Hi and welcome back to Movies Reloaded. Today we have a great recapped movie for you, so sit back and relax and enjoy the film. One gloomy afternoon, John arrives home from work and greets his wife, Karen, who is in the kitchen preparing dinner. He tries to strike up a conversation with Karen, but she barely speaks to him and doesn't even acknowledge his presence. They watch a movie later that evening while John makes another attempt to speak with his wife. He leaves the living room after receiving the same blank response, but Karen stops him and says she has something to tell him. Despite her hesitation, she says something unrelated. The following morning, John prepares for work and goes to the restroom. He feels a strong impact that causes a hole to appear in their bathroom ceiling as he looks in the mirror. When John looks through the hole, he observes a few fighter jets passing by. He makes an immediate decision to leave their apartment to investigate the commotion. Karen, on the other hand, approaches him and makes another attempt to speak. John leaves his wife, who is actually planning to file for divorce, because he is now obsessively focused on satisfying his curiosity. John is shocked to see an airplane crash into a nearby building from outside. The man next to him remarks that the incident resembles the 9/11 tragedy, which John is unaware of. He dashes back to their apartment as an awful incident breaks out in the streets. The people downstairs are biting. John then informs Karen. Karen, who is perplexed, peers out of their window and notices two individuals eating a man alive. Nothing could have prepared them for this nightmare, so they must now concentrate on holding on until assistance shows up. As a result, Karen and John make a list of their food and supplies and discover that it will only last them a few days. They decide to rob their neighbors of their belongings as a result. After deciding that Karen would do it the following time, John leaves first. A short while later, John shows up with some food and informs Karen that their next-door neighbors, the Andersons, have unlocked their door. Karen is intrigued by this, so she gets ready and enters the Andersons' home to rob them. She tells John to get ready to break in and steal their neighbor's television when she returns with a few bottles of wine. They watch the news with the recently stolen television later that night. They were advised to stay away from infected people and to mark their windows with Lex so that rescuers could identify them. The next morning, Karen, who had just returned from robbing, greets John when he awakens. It appears that his wife simply went a step further in gathering supplies by stealing a dress as well. Later, when John wonders what to do if infected individuals try to enter their building, Karen simply advises him that they must defend themselves. They both practice their response to potential attacks in this regard by getting some tools and weapons ready. Later on in the evening, Karen hears a noise outside their door and calls out to John to come over. They quickly open it, thinking it's the rescue team, and are greeted by an infected person who tries to bite them right away. Luckily, they are able to repel it without getting hurt. John says that he would kill to smoke at that moment because he is so stressed out about what just happened. When Karen takes a few cigarettes out of their cabinet in response to what her husband just said, John asks her curiously if she has anything else in there. To his surprise, Karen quickly snorts up a large quantity of illegal stimulants. John initially opposes it, but he ultimately decides to give it a try. Later, Karen proudly displays her collection of stimulants in addition to the pistol she owns. Karen awakens the following morning to the sound of a gunshot. She gets up right away and goes to the kitchen only to find John playing with her gun and shooting a pot Karen's mother had given her. She grabs the weapon from him out of anger and takes a shower in the restroom. Later that day, they proceed with their routine working out and making some weapons by placing the broken pieces of the pot in their doorway to indicate that they are inside the house. They do, however, take breaks from exercising to snort some stimulants. One day, as they go about their daily activities, they hear someone attempting to open the door from the outside and hear a noise coming from the door once more. John takes a knife as a safety measure out of concern that it might be another infected person, while Karen takes a hammer. As soon as they open the door, they discover that their neighbors Emily and Leo are attempting to occupy their house. They accept the couple into their home despite Karen's reluctance and John's insistence. As soon as they are settled in the living room, Leo explains that he and Emily were trapped in the laundry room immediately following the crash, and when they emerged, there were already infected individuals inside the structure. However, they were able to locate the broken pot at Karen and John's door and understood the message right away. In the middle of their conversation, the next-door couple's stomachs start to growl, so they kindly request some food to eat. Although Karen agrees, she starts to argue that Leo and Emily can't stay as soon as she and John enter the kitchen. Back in the living room, Emily criticizes Karen and claims that she became a little crazy following her miscarriage. It goes without saying that there is unavoidable tension between the two women. After the next-door couple has finished eating, Emily notices a dress on a chair nearby. Leo adds that they also have the same television when she claims she has it at home. Karen and John exchange awkward looks as they hear this. They all have a good drink later and decide to rest for the night. When Emily asks where they should stay, Karen responds that they can sleep on the floor and may bring some pillows. Although she is inadvertently offended, Emily shares a bed with Leo. In the wee hours, Karen pulls a quick prank to enrage her neighbor even more. She pretends to be having an intense moment with John while making loud moaning noises. Leo feels threatened, so Emily climbs on top of him and begins to scream loudly. Karen, on the other hand, is unmoved and orders John to slap her from behind. When he does so, it is so loud that Emily is forced to concede defeat. The four of them eat breakfast the following morning, and Karen instructs the other couple to organize and clean up. Emily is triggered by this, and she informs her husband that they need to eliminate the threats. Later, the other couple decides to stab Karen and John with a knife after they pass out on the couch. When Karen wakes up and offers to bake them cookies, their plans are foiled. Little do the other couple realize that Karen is aware of their murderous plot, so she secretly adds amphetamines to the cookies. Leo and Emily went into shock and died as a result of the 2 tablespoons she added. Karen and John snort some stimulants to relax after doing something they feel guilty about. They find Leo alive and well after hearing odd noise suddenly come from the living room. Karen shoots him dead with a pistol because he appears to be an infected person without a mind this time. Emily suddenly gets up from the couch and is shot as well. Later that evening, John and Karen drag the corpses from their residence and take some Valium before going to bed. The rescue team asks everyone to turn on their lights, but they are too deep in sleep to notice. They both miss their chance to run away as a result. The following day, they spend some quality time together in the bathtub, during which Karen declares her desire to adopt a child should they manage to survive. John concurs, and they alternately express their love for one another. That evening, John takes Karen on a quick indoor date where they act like complete strangers who are attempting to get to know one another. As the evening goes on, they become more passionate and start making out. But when they hear a knock on the door, they become agitated. John tries to stop Karen from opening the door, but it's too late. Karen rushes to do so. 3 men barge into their home abruptly and demand valuables. However, since they genuinely lack anything valuable, the leader orders his men to beat up John while he attacks Karen. Initially helpless, Karen stabs the man in the neck with a knife and throws flour in his face. When the other 2 men walk in, they see a bloody scene, but John shoots both of them right away. John and Karen immediately drag the bodies outside of their house. Later that evening, they hear helicopters, but the rescue crew ignores them. They both make the decision to leave tomorrow after rushing through the crowd of infected people. The following day, they carry out their plan, but when they underestimated the number of infected people downstairs, they turn around and go back to their home. It's only a matter of time before Karen contracts an infection after being bitten in the leg, which makes the situation worse. John promises that a drug company is out there, ready to profit from their vaccines. This reassures his wife, and shortly after that, they go to bed. After having a nightmare about losing control in the middle of their sleep, Karen decides to leave before the virus engulfs her. John, however, sees her heading toward the door and stops her in her tracks. Later, he gives his wife a small amount of his blood in the hopes that it will keep her alive until assistance can arrive. Karen initially disputes her hunger, but John insists that it is his decision, so she just goes along. The following morning, as Karen and John stand by the window, they come to the realization that they might be the last people in the city. Given that it's going to be her last day, John tells Karen about all of his future plans and how he envisions them playing out. John explains that Karen will receive the vaccine, which has a side effect that will allow her to become pregnant. Before the rescue team arrives the following day, John is not afraid to express to his wife how much he wants to spend his later years with her, and Karen agrees. They both start crying at once, but Karen excuses herself, telling John she needs to take a bath. She is about to commit suicide in the bathroom when John enters unexpectedly and offers her a glass of his blood. Karen spends a romantic evening with her husband, and they make love for the last time, knowing that it won't be long before she contracts the disease completely. The following morning, John wakes up in bed by himself and goes to the bathroom, where he discovers a note from Karen. She expresses her love for John and how ideal she imagines their relationship to be in the note. In contrast, in her most vivid nightmares, she was unable to control her hunger. She tells John that he can find her in the nursery and begs him to put an end to her suffering as a result. John goes to the nursery and discovers Karen chained up there with a broken heart. Sadly, she is now completely infected and cannot be saved. A short while later, John grabs the gun and points it at his wife's head. Karen gives him a dead-eyed stare just before he pulls the trigger, and he apologizes for what he's about to do. The rescue crew is the one who breaks down the door suddenly. They look around looking for any survivors when they come across the nursery. They discover Karen and John, who are both infected and chained to the wall. To their horror, the commander simply replies in shock that it's because of love. When the rescuers ask why their hands are taped together, the rescuers make the decision to kill both of them shortly after. In the end, John was unable to kill the person he loved most, so he chose to share her suffering. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the recap. Let us know in the comments what you thought. And while you're here, consider subscribing. We would love to have you as part of our community. Hi, welcome back to